Book 11, what book?
In Euclid's.
Euclidean geometry.
Go on then, quote mine it. Let's have a look.
What do you mean, quote mine? You just said.
If we're gonna cite Euclid's book 11, right? You can't preempt it with quote mine it. You have to say neutrally. Go on then, let's see it. But you can't presuppose it's quote mined.
Well, he just cited that it said the surface is stated as two-dimensional. Right,
Yeah, but
Wardy?
he also said it was going to be quote mined. That's not fair because you're basically applying a bias before you've even seen the evidence.
What's he quoting it as? Where are you getting your statement from?
What you're
you
missing,
show yours,
Tony.
Wardy.
What you're missing, Tony, is he's had this conversation with several people on Twitter and been told he's wrong.
Has anybody given any evidence to support the assertion that he's wrong, or have they just given their opinion?
Yeah, they've given the quotes from the book and explained what they mean on
show
Twitter.
Us where, Wardy. Go on.
You've been shown all of this on Twitter.
I've been shown. What have I been shown, Wardy? Please.
That your understanding of Euclid's work is wrong.
My understanding of Euclid's work. Have you ever got to book 11 yet?
I've never read it.
Oh. Well, you don't just read Euclid, right? But like, let's say you do just read it. You have never read it, but you know for a fact that it says that a surface is two-dimensional, right? That's what you said.
What do you mean? I don't know what it says in the book. I know that that's the common definition or understanding of it.
Of what? Euclid.
The question you asked me is a surface of a sphere, 2D or 3D.
Yeah.
And I answered you based on what I believe is the common understanding.
No, you said Euclid states that all surfaces are two-dimensional. Did you or did you not state that?
Because that's where the common understanding comes from, is Euclid's work.
Right, but then I asked you if you'd ever got to book 11. And
why do I need to read Euclid's work directly to understand what everybody else is saying about Euclid's work?
Because up until book 11, it is two-dimensional geometry. But
okay, what does he say in book 11 then?
Book 11, it turns to solid geometry. And within the definitions of each book, it starts off with the new definitions for something. If it needs to be done for that particular book, the definitions will be required to change, right? Like on book 3, when they start requiring all the definitions, they're all the definitions that are relative to circles, right? So when you go to solid geometry in book 11, they redefine the definitions for the solid geometry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just take a moment to pause there, because if you just say yep, you acknowledge that there is a change in position with regards to solid geometry.
I'm acknowledging what he's saying. I'm not necessarily agreeing with it.
No, but I just want to emphasize the point that you just agreed to, that it acknowledges solid geometry. That's important, because when you preempted this with, the surface of a sphere is two-dimensional in Euclid's work, if he's acknowledging three-dimensional solid objects in book 11, then there might be something there that might not agree with what your position was prior to joining. Can you concede that that might be true now?
Understanding of your position before I say either way.
No, but do you acknowledge the position that you're in, that you might not actually be right because book 11 deals with specifically solid shapes? Can you agree that when we go forward now, there might be an answer in there that you previously didn't know about that does deal with spheres within Euclidean geometry?
I find that highly unlikely. It depends if we're actually talking about the surface of the sphere or cross sections, for example.
I'm not asking you to agree that you're wrong or right. I'm just asking you to acknowledge that there might be something there that you previously didn't know about that does address specifically the surface of a sphere within Euclidean geometry. That's all I'm asking.
Information that I'm asking for, and you guys are just saying I could be wrong. Well, okay, show me where I could be wrong.
I'm asking, will you acknowledge that we're now at a point where there may be a difference in answer that you didn't previously know about that might not support your position? So all I'm asking, can you agree that that might be the case from this point forward?
I will acknowledge that in context, Euclid may make statements that you believe to be contradictory to previous statements that he's made in previous books, yes.
Great. Carry on, Bev.
Right, can you see in the live stream?
Yeah, nobody's streaming, but I can see the text chat.
Yeah, we can see that last one there. That's the page from book 11.
Yeah.
Right, well that's the first page of book 11. And we start off with the definitions, right?
Yeah.
So first of all we redefine the solid that we're talking about. That has length, breadth, and thickness.
Yeah.
Right, so that's 3 dimensions. Length 1, breadth 2, thickness 3. 1, 2, 3. 3 dimensions.
Right.
Then it goes, that which bounds a solid is its superficies. Or its surface.
Its surface, yeah.
Yeah, so that
I think there's a bit earlier on which I've seen quoted around somewhere.
Is a surface. So if the solid is 3-dimensional, then the surface will be 3-dimensional, right? Now, not saying that a cube is 3-dimensional, so therefore the surface is, because the surface of a cube is a 2-dimensional object, right? It's a square. That's 2D. Like on a plane, that's what 2 dimensions is. Length, breadth. A cube, right, is different. A sphere, though, right, is a actual 3-dimensional object. It curves in all dimensions, doesn't it?
Yes, but it has a 2-dimensional surface.
Well,
which
that's where we'll get
Euclid
to, right?
would have
like
said
it says
earlier
it
on.
bounds a solid. So if the solid is 3-dimensional and the surface bounds it, and like a sphere is 3-dimensional, so the surface is what you look at of a sphere. Like when you look at a sphere, you see its surface, don't you?
Yeah.
Right, and that is 3-dimensional, isn't it? When you look at it, it's 3-dimensional. As stated in book 11, definition 2.
No, because you don't see the whole sphere. You only see the surface, and the surface is 2-dimensional.
Isn't it? It's like, there is a third dimension. It's not on a plane or a flat surface, is it? There is an extra dimension.
In reality, it is 3 dimensions. What you see is 2 of them.
Boom.
And when I say in reality it's 3 dimensions, a sphere is 3-dimensional. What you see is 2 of those dimensions. Its surface. That's what Euclid is saying.
No,
you can't see all the way through the object.
Listen, look, it's a book of logic, right? And it states that the solid has 3 dimensions: length, breadth, thickness. 1, 2, 3. 3 dimensions. It then states right after it. So that was number 1. So number 2 states that which bounds a solid is its surface.
Yeah,
logically consistent to say that if the surface bounds the solid, then that will be 3-dimensional.
No, that's not what's being said there at all.
Specifically why he's redefined the surface in this book right after explaining, after redefining what a solid is, because he never mentioned solids up until now. So he mentions the solid, and then he defines logically the surface that bounds it, right? I mean, it's pretty simple.
You're inferring that by that he means that the surface is also 3-dimensional. He's not stating that.
No, he's just saying that which bounds a solid is its surface.
Yes. The extent of the dimensions of a solid is its surface area. This is why we always refer to surfaces as surface area, and you compute areas in 2 dimensions.
Yeah, but just because you compute it in 2 dimensions doesn't mean that the object is actually 2-dimensional, correct? The sphere does have 3 dimensions in reality, right?
Yeah, the actual object itself, a sphere, is 3D, but you're not computing its volume, you're computing its area, and its area is its surface.
Right. You've
So
not
this is
listened to what
why
I just
you're
said.
only dealing with 2 dimensions, not 3.
You've not listened to what I just said. The sphere exists in physical world in 3 dimensions. It's not a circle, is it? It's got depth.
Yeah.
So just because you can calculate the surface area using a 2-dimensional reference frame does not make it 2-dimensional. You're removing the 3rd dimension for the purpose of calculation, but that doesn't make it 2-dimensional.
Yeah, if you're talking about, like, if I had a hollow sphere, for example, which only was represented by that surface area of a sphere, like, instead of having, like, a globe, like a solid ball, think about it like a football, yeah? A football is basically just surface that contains air.
Mm-hmm.
That surface, if you look at it and pick it up, you know, it's a 3-dimensional object. But the area of that is calculated in 2 dimensions.
Yeah, and I'll re-say my point so that hopefully this goes in. Just because you remove the 3rd dimension mathematically doesn't suddenly make it a 2-dimensional thing. What you're actually doing is removing the 3rd dimension mathematically to calculate it as a 2-dimensional object and claiming that it's a 2-dimensional calculation. But
no, you're not removing the 3rd dimension. There is no 3rd dimension because it's only surface. The 3rd dimension implies that the surface has depth, and surfaces don't have depth.
But the surface of a sphere does have depth, otherwise it would be a circle.
No.
Yes.
No.
You're conflating and confusing the ability to calculate mathematically in the 2-dimension a 3-dimensional object. That doesn't make it 2-dimensional.
No, that's wrong.
It isn't.
You're going to have to let him have this. If he wants to imagine a 2-dimensional surface, Tony, you're going to have to let him have it. You know, he can have what he wants. Like, he can imagine it.
Okay, I can agree to disagree, but if I agree to disagree on a point that I'm fundamentally against you on, and I can do it because I don't mind moving forward, the natural progression
I'll be right back,
forward,
guys. I've got to pop into a meeting at work. I'm not running away, okay? I will come back.
Bastard. I was just about to climax. I have to hold it. Bastard.